Yo, what's good? Back with another Mysteries and Secrets video. And I just want to go over a few little things real quick. Now, the first one is talking about Port Chatham, Alaska. Now, in this town, what was going on is that people were going missing around the town. There was reports of strange type of beings that were like, you know, 7 to 10 to 12 foot tall with red eyes, and they were looking through people's like windows. And some reports where people were being snatched out of, like, if people like had their window kind of open, things would snatch them out their windows. Hunters were going missing. And let's go ahead and read a little bit into it. Port Chatham, a bay on the southern tip of the Kenai and a former village of the same name, hardly seems like a setting for inexplicable terror and fright, but a series of mysterious disappearances and neutralizations where the Kenai Mountains, narrow before plunging into the North Pacific, gave birth to the rumor that began in the 1930s and continued to this day. Well, if it was a rumor, people would still be there, but the people moved out for a good reason, you know? Here's a little story. Tom Larson went out to chop wood for fish traps when he saw something large and hairy on the beach. He ran back home for his rifle. When he returned to the water's edge, the thing just stared at him. Larson can never explain why he did not fire. So yeah, so it just talks about, different types of stories and that people went through or whatever. So yeah, I think this is more interesting if you actually go read more into this yourself. Like a lot of these, I want you to do your own independent research, study, and analyzation yourself. So that's Port Chatham, Alaska. Now, the next one is going to talk about in Vietnam, both the Viet Cong and the Americans, they were encountering, between firefights and at nighttime when they were sleeping, they were encountering what they were called rock apes. Now, these are basically kind of like Bigfoot sightings. And in Vietnam, you have, like, you can go on YouTube and you can watch Vietnam veterans talk about this. You can watch Viet Cong veterans talk about this, and it translates it to English. And some of them actually speak English, and they'll tell you about their time in Vietnam, and they'll talk about how there was a mysterious type of apes that were like 10 foot, 12 foot tall that would snatch people, if they weren't like close and if everybody wasn't keeping a watch, right? They'll snatch you at night. Let's say you had to use the bathroom or whatever. Like they will snatch you in the night. And these rock apes, they will start throwing rocks. Like late at night, there was a report of these beings throwing rocks and stuff, right? So it's very interesting. It talks about the first sightings, They walked upright, traveled in groups, and made loud, aggressive vocalizations that echoed through the jungle. Soldiers claimed the creatures showed little fear of humans, sometimes approaching patrols closely before being driven off by gunfire. Interesting, And as it says, rock ape sightings weren't limited to American forces. Viet Cong and North Vietnamese troops also reported encounters with similar creatures. The reports were taken seriously enough that an NVA general allegedly organized an expedition to 1974 to capture or eliminate one of the beings, a rare example of both sides of the war being united by the same unexplained phenomenon. So it's very interesting, It says soldiers from opposing armies with no contact and no shared folklore describe nearly identical creatures. So there's something there, right? And also, this is a history of the area in Vietnam. It says the Batuk Tut, excuse me if I'm butchering that word, but the Batuk Tut, a legend older than the war. Long before American troops arrived, Vietnamese folklore told of the Batuk Tut, also known as I can't pronounce that, forest people. These beings were described as bipedal, hairy, and human-like, living deep in the remote mountains. You see that? These similarities between the Babatot and the rock ape suggest that soldiers may have been encountering the same phenomenon described in local legends for generations. Even Native Americans have folklore about Bigfoot. Like, there's always these creatures around the world that are like Bigfoot similar, and they got different names. There's different types of them. There's different species, and it's interesting. Right? So yeah, and it talks about, stories from the field, the rock throwing attacks, close range sightings, multiple eyewitness accounts. So yeah, you might want to check this out. Just type in rock apes Vietnam. The next thing I want to talk about is domes. These are deep underground military bases, and you know they're always like, see, ever since this AI stuff, watch out for this AI. This is Illuminati stuff. This AI is always in the favor of the elites. So it says a deep underground military base, which are highly classified, fortified subterranean networks, often explored in conspiracy theories, sci-fi, and ufology. So they make it seem like it's just a conspiracy theory. Don't worry about it. But also, they don't deny it. They say there are deep underground military bases which are highly classified, fortified subterranean networks, meaning that they have these secret underground bases, some of them as big as cities, and some of these places, yeah, we know about the Area 51 and S4 base, but some of these deep underground bases are massive, and like they're as big as cities, and they do all types of things down there, from biogenetics research. They could be doing time travel experiments, advance all type of things. They could do things that we can't even imagine. And also, they have deep underwater bases as well. And some of these bases are ancient, right? And to me, it's very interesting. It's very interesting and intriguing. Just learning about this and reading about this. But you might want to read more about this yourself. And also, they're called sensitive installations as well. You can type in sensitive installation. The next thing I want to talk about is a tupla. And a tupla is pretty much whenever imagine somebody going through something like, let's say if you had somebody you really love and they committed seppuku, and through intense emotions and intense thought forms, you can actually create an energy thought form, meaning that you can create kind of like how the demiurge was born, right? So you can create if you go through enough pain in life, you can create like an entity that becomes like a familiar spirit that can follow you around. So let's say you're always depressed, you're always stressed, and it gets to that extreme point where you want to just, end it all or whatever. If you keep coming up to that point, you keep yourself in that frequency long enough, you can actually create a being, a type of energy, louche vampire, pretty much, that's there, that pretty much torments you. And here's the official definition. A tupla is an autonomous mental entity or thought form created through intense concentration and meditation. Originated in Tibetan mysticism as a spiritual manifestation, it has evolved into modern internet communities into a psychological phenomenon where practitioners, tuplamancers, intentionally create sentient, independent, imaginary companion that shares their mind. Like I said, it can be good in a way, but also, if you do play with beings or try to create a being or something with your mind. I know it sounds crazy on the outside looking in, but if you do play with stuff like that, you got to be very careful that you don't create something evil, like Sophia did with the demiurge. Because it can be a bad thing, or it can be a thing that you can talk to in your mind and you can actually generate it, kind of like how humans generated artificial intelligence. You just got to. It's like a spiritual version of artificial intelligence that you can create with enormous emotional frequency. The next thing is called an egregore, and the egregore is pretty much the same thing. It's pretty an egregore is pretty much the same thing. A huge collection of emotional energy that can create like an entity, an egregore, right? So yeah, very interesting stuff. Look into that. Next is Operation High Jump. Now, Operation High Jump was towards the end of World War II. Germany, it had like Germany was always planning something. Like the Führer already had a plan. So, Operation High Jump was when the Americans and the British, and I think the Canadians, I believe, or some other task force, they found out that Germany actually had a massive type of base in Antarctica, but it was like a city base. It was something that was massive. Like there was a lot of German U-boats that were never found after World War II, and a lot of these German U-boats, they were rumored to head to Antarctica and Argentina. And what happened in Operation High Jump is like these UFO type things came out from the water and they started attacking the American task force, you know, and when they attacked this American task force, they kind of just pretty much obliterated everything, and then like the United States kind of had to get out of there, and they were still saying that Germany had like a strong, like strong type of base or something subterranean underneath the ice in Antarctica, and there's even rumors of that to this day that there's something there, but now, because the Illuminati controls everything, they all work together. They all work together from the beginning, but you know what it is. But there's definitely something in Antarctica. And Operation High Jump kind of explains that, because Germany had a place called New Swabia. But also they were talking about, like, there was this general named Admiral Byrd. And Admiral Byrd was talking about how, like, Antarctica contains like pretty much like another landmass. It's all not frozen. Like there's some parts that are not frozen, and there's some parts that you actually go in. Like you go inside the Earth, and you go into like an inner Earth and stuff like that. Like it gets interesting and it gets pretty, extreme. But that's all I want to talk about. Yeah. Let me know if you want me to keep making videos like this. I just thought it was some interesting information. Yeah, peace.